Part 10. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 91. When he walked out of the gate of the eldest princess's mansion, Chu Xuanyi saw a young man in a thin shirt who was as gentle as water. Their eyes met and each of them paused. Chu Lingchuan smiled slightly and nodded, passing him calmly. Chu Xuanyi frowned slightly, and couldn't help but wonder about the identity of this young man. He had a good appearance, and based on the eldest princess's past habits, he was probably a man's favorite or something, but his demeanor was not the same. Chu Xuanyi turned his head and looked at the young man's back as slender as a green bamboo, feeling suspicious in his heart. What is the identity of a young man who can freely step into the gate of the princess's mansion without informing him? Prince Yi Commander Lu came over and saluted respectfully, but what's the problem? Chu Xuanyi glanced at him, hesitated for a moment, and finally asked, I seem to have never seen that young man before. He should not be the son of a noble family in the imperial capital. As the eldest son of Prince Rong, he is also in charge of the palace's imperial army. Most of the time when a noble family son appears, he needs to dispatch the imperial army to maintain order, but he has never seen this young man once. Lu Jun followed his gaze and said lightly, You mean Mr. Chu? This is the eldest princess's new servant. He came last night. Your Highness asked him to go back and deal with his own affairs. The princess will start moving in today. Live in the mansion. The new servant? Chu Xuanyi's expression suddenly became subtle and he moved his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. After a moment of silence, he said goodbye and walked out of the gate of the princess mansion with a somewhat hesitant pace. His legs were sore and swollen after kneeling all night. It would not be too much for a martial artist, and now the eldest princess could feel relieved. Qi is more important than anything else. Only. The new servant? Chu Xuanyi frowned. Since he has never met this young man, how did the eldest princess know him? Could it be that he is a bastard from another family? Chu Xuanyi was thinking about the possible identity of this young man in his mind. After much thought, he couldn't think of whose family he belonged to. And his surname was Chu. If they are from the imperial capital of the Western Qi dynasty, they can only be children of the royal family, and this range is even smaller. It is impossible that he, the crown prince of Prince Rong's palace, has never met him, and the eldest princess cannot be so stupid as to accept a child of the clan as a male favorite. Chu Xuanyi suppressed his emotions, took one last look at the gate of the eldest princess's mansion, turned around, got on his horse, and rode away. Chu Lingchuan arrived at the west courtyard with Nanny Wu from the eldest princess's mansion. After crossing an arch bridge, he saw several men sitting, standing, or leaning on the railings in the corridor. The most eye-catching one was a young man in red. Chu Lingchuan's eyes stopped, and the red dress was so dazzling that it was difficult for people to ignore it. The lake is sparkling, and the winding corridor is connected to the flower hall. The air is filled with the refreshing fragrance of flowers. The young master is unparalleled in the corridor, watching the koi fish playing in the lake, and chatting with his hands in his spare time. He is leisurely and contented, lazy and comfortable. Chu Lingchuan's expression was a little subtle. He couldn't tell whether he was sighing or envious. They were all young men of about the same age. Some of them could live in seclusion in such a holy land with their good looks, while others had to travel all over the world to deal with business in banks and horse farms. They were so busy. Feet do not touch the ground. Well. Same people but different fates. As Aunt Wu walked into the flower hall, Chu Lingchuan instantly met 4 pairs of eyes. A new person is here. The boy in red stood up first and faced the handsome Chu Lingchuan, his eyes bright. What's your name? Her Royal Highness the Princess's new favorite. Chu Lingchuan smiled gently and harmlessly. My dear Chu Lingchuan, I will live with you in the west courtyard from now on. Please give me your advice. Chu Lingchuan, Qi Ling leaned on the railing, dressed in white clothes that were better than the snow, pure and unstained by dust, young master of the royal family. How is that possible? Wen Zhan slowly shook his head and chuckled. No matter how confused His Highness is, there is no way he can get a clan prince to serve as your servant. Besides, His Highness is not confused at all now. That's right. Qi Ling nodded, so you should not be from Ziki. Whether he is from Ziki or not, since he enters the backyard of Her Royal Highness the Princess, there must be a first come, first served rule. Zhong Zongjin, who was wearing a cloud robe, said lightly, did Aunt Wu teach him how to meet his brother? Aunt Wu glanced at him calmly, then turned to look at Chu Ling Chuan. Young master, if you need anything, you can tell the four of them, or you can just come to me directly. I still have some other work in hand, so I will leave for now. Chu Ling Chuan nodded, please do. Everyone in the emperor's harem is called elder sister or younger sister. Should we also have a younger brother? Hong Yu said excitedly. If we follow the first come, first served rule, I should be considered the older brother, right? Well, Xiao Quinchuan, you be good in the future and we will take good care of you. Xiao Quinchuan. Chu Ling Chuan looked at the young man in front of him who was clearly 1 or 2 years younger than himself. His smile cracked for a moment, and then he returned to being calm and calm. Chu Ling Chuan, this name seems familiar. Qi Ling held his chin and thought carefully, let me think about where I have heard this name. Chu Ling Chuan's voice was gentle and sweet, like the sound of nature. Her Royal Highness the Princess's backyard is so harmonious. The jealousy and intrigue that I expected don't seem to exist. Are you jealous? Wen Zhan tilted his head and smiled lightly. The guy in red in front of you has been thinking of ways to win favor recently, but unfortunately he got off to a bad start. If you also plan to fight for favor, I think the two of you can discuss the countermeasures and see what to do. It's the princess favor. Dollar window. Taboola equals window. Taboola. Taboola.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, Taboola below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 92. Chu Ling Chuan looked at Hong Yu. What? Hong Yu raised his eyebrows and looked at Wen Zhan dissatisfied. Are you worried that after I win His Highness's favor, my status will be superior to yours? Wen Zhan laughed. What kind of status do you want as a servant? How about making you a concubine? Hong Yu was angry. You are the empress. Chu Ling Chuan said politely, I wonder who can take me to my residence to settle down. Hong Yu. Qi Ling said, take Mr. Chu with you. Kuryu frowned, why me? Because you are the youngest. What's wrong with being young? Hong Yu frowned, obviously dissatisfied with this arrangement. Shouldn't you be protected if you are young? Why is it always me who runs errands? The weather is getting hotter and hotter, and summer clothes have to be replaced with new ones every day. Zhong Jin looked at him leisurely. If you want to continue wearing beautiful new clothes, don't complain so much, otherwise I will ask you to follow just like the Fukang shadow guard beside His Highness. He wears black clothes every day. Let's see how you can compete for favor in front of His Highness. Hong Yu's face changed slightly and she looked at him bitterly. You are such a cunning fox. He was too lazy to argue with him. Zhong Zongjin accepted it calmly. Thank you for the compliment. Hong Yu curled her lips and turned to look at Chu Ling Chuan. Master Chu, please. Chu Ling Chuan thanked him gently, nodded goodbye to the other three, then turned around and left with Hong Yu. The three people in the flower hall stared at his back quietly, thoughtfully. Qi Ling said, what do you think? Chu's surname. Zhong Zongjin touched his chin. Except for the four of us, anyone who can step into the backyard of the eldest princess's mansion in a majestic manner must be someone whom His Highness trusts. He will live with us in the west courtyard in the future, but have you noticed that he didn't bring any luggage here today? Wen Zhan smiled lightly. What does this mean? Qi Ling raised his eyebrows. Does that mean he doesn't take a shower or change clothes at night? Wen Zhan looked at him expressionlessly. It means that he can freely enter and leave the princess's palace, and he must have other residences in the Ziki imperial city. Zhong Jin frowned. This shows that he has an extraordinary background. A young man with the surname of Emperor Ziki, even if he is not a member of the imperial family of Ziki, this surname is still very eye-catching. He can come to the imperial capital of Ziki openly with this surname, and freely enter and leave the eldest princess's mansion. An idea flashed in his mind, and Zhong Jin straightened up in shock. I know who he is. The air fell silent. Wen Zhan and Qi Ling turned to look at him in unison. No wonder you just said that. The name sounded familiar. Zongjin raised his hand to his forehead and took a deep breath. It does sound familiar to me. It doesn't matter if I don't. Qi Ling was silent for a moment. One of our own. Zongjin nodded. The most famous red-top businessman in the Kyushu continent is named Chu. His business power is spread all over the world, and the industries involved are many and complex, including ironware, war horses, weapons, and other businesses that are directly related to the wars in various countries. In his hands. After hearing what he said, Wen Zhan slowly shook his head. I don't know him. You, a weak scholar who only reads books about sages, naturally don't know him. Qi Ling glanced at him. But although I have heard of him, I have only heard of his name but have never met him. I have never met him in person. Zhong Jin nodded. This man just now is the only son of the head of the Chu family. Wen Zhan was silent and said in a subtle tone, what were you talking about just now? What are the rules for meeting elders? Who is the elder brother? Who is the younger brother? Chu Ling Chuan is my elder brother. Zongjin sighed and leaned against the railing. This is a golden thigh. A thigh inlaid with gold and jade, you must hold it tightly. The sage said. Qi Ling pulled out a fan from his waist and swung the folding fan open. Wealth and honor cannot be kinky, poverty and lowliness cannot be changed. Qi is a man with integrity and backbone. Wen Zhan said, a scholar cannot bow down for 5 buckets of rice. It's not 5 buckets of rice that makes you lose your back now. Zongjin sneered, it's the gold and silver mountains that make the country rich and powerful. It makes sense. So is this thigh a hug or not? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 93. The night was dark, and the lights in Yukian Palace were brightly lit. Your Majesty. Chen Hai walked into the palace and bowed to report, someone from Renshao Palace has sent word that the Queen Mother is in poor health. Would your Majesty want to go over and take a look? His Majesty the Emperor was sitting behind the dragon case reviewing the memorial. Hearing this, he said calmly, have you summoned the imperial physician to take a look? Already seen it? What did the doctor say? The imperial doctor said that he was emotionally unstable, depressed in his heart, and out of breath. Chen Hai's voice became smaller and smaller, and he lowered his eyebrows and lowered his eyes. Actually, the emperor also knows the reason. Anyway, I'd better go over and take a look. The emperor closed the book he was reading and put it aside casually. Is there anything going on outside today? No, all the mansions are very quiet. I'm afraid they will all become frightened birds. The emperor smiled coldly. There is not even a single person who can stand up in this huge court. It shows how corrupt my ministers are. Even if corrupt officials were rampant and treacherous ministers were in power throughout the dynasties, there were always 1 or 2 loyal and upright officials who stuck to their hearts, were loyal to the emperor, and cared about the people. However, looking at Ziki now, there is not even a single honest official in the civil and military dynasties. Chen Hai said respectfully, there must be honest officials, but Her Royal Highness the Princess's thunderous tactics make people feel wary. It is human nature for ministers to be uneasy. The Emperor said nothing. Thunderous means. Now Ziki needs thunderous methods like Qing Huang, otherwise who can cure these corrupt officials from aristocratic families who have inflated their appetites? The Emperor was silent for a moment. There was no movement last night. Chen Haidao, I heard that the princes of the clan went to the eldest princess's house to apologize last night, but Her Royal Highness went to bed early at night, so the princes did not see her. It's right not to see you. The Emperor picked up the tea and took a sip. Prince Rong and the others are elders after all. They cannot be allowed to lower themselves to Qing Huang. However, this matter is serious and cannot be treated lightly. We must give them something. It's just a lesson. Not seeing him will make them feel unsure, and they will not dare to make such a mistake next time. Your Majesty is right. Chen Hai chuckled. Her Royal Highness the Princess must also think so. The Emperor sighed and stood up. Show me the Renchao Palace. Yes. Arriving at Renchao Palace, the Emperor got down from the imperial carriage and walked into the Queen Mother's palace. He raised his hands and dismissed the palace servants who were kneeling on the floor, leaving only Chen Hai waiting on the side. Walking into the inner hall, he saw the Queen Mother lying on her side on a soft brocade couch, taking a nap. The Emperor paid his respects, walked to the opposite side of the brocade couch and sat down. Is the Queen Mother's health feeling better? The Queen Mother seemed a little tired and looked gloomy. It took a while before she opened her eyes and said nonchalantly, it's rare that the Emperor still remembers to care about the health of the AI family. What did the Queen Mother say? The Emperor sighed, I have been busy with government affairs these 2 days. I thought that with the Queen and concubine Duan taking care of me, and the imperial doctor on call, the Queen Mother's body should be fine, so it's coming less often. The Queen Mother did not speak for a while. Her eyes were slightly closed, and her expression was not good. The Emperor sat drinking tea and was silent for a long time before he said calmly, there have been a lot of things happening in the palace recently, and there are some messy rumors outside. I asked them not to spread them to the Queen Mother, so as not to affect her mood. Queen Mother, please take care of her body. Important. Rumors, the Queen Mother smiled coldly. Is it a rumor that Tianyin was demoted to the county king? Is it a rumor that the imperial concubine was demoted to Zaiyi? Or is it a rumor that Jinzi was punished in court? The Emperor narrowed his eyes and said nothing. The Queen Mother sat up straight, her voice still gloomy and calm. Ijia is old, and she really didn't want to pay attention to the trivial things outside, but the Emperor should know that the most caring person in the harem is the imperial concubine, and Ijia knows what other people are thinking, how many of them treat the Ijia sincerely. The Emperor secretly thought, is the imperial concubine being considerate? That's wolfish ambition. Tianyin has always been my favorite grandson. You quietly let him get beaten up and demoted him to the county king. What are you doing? The Queen Mother's face darkened. Let him completely end the dispute. Choose thoughts. I didn't mean that. The Emperor didn't mean it, but he did it. If I don't handle it this way, I won't be able to face King Zhenbei in the future. The Emperor frowned and said seriously, Yin's princess was killed by him himself. No matter what the reason for killing the Qi family, the royal family must do this. Give the king of Zhenbei an explanation. I can't just punish him without punishment. Let's just pretend this didn't happen. The Queen Mother was speechless for a moment. What about concubine Feng? What mistake did she make? She was wrong because she had no good way to teach her daughter. The Emperor's face was slightly cold. Yuling conspired with Feng Jinzi to instigate the noble sons of the clan to murder the eldest princess. This alone is inexcusable. I did not put him in the cold palace, that is for the sake of past friendship. Please be lenient with her, otherwise. After a pause, Queen Mother should know that Yiling and Feng Jinzi should always be executed for their behavior. The Queen Mother was shocked. If he is found guilty of murdering the eldest princess, there is really no way to give him a lenient sentence. However, even if the prince commits the same crime as the common people, the royal children are different after all. Doesn't it depend on the emperor whether he will be punished by death or not? If the emperor is willing to let it go, these things can be treated as if they did not happen. If the emperor is not willing to let it go, of course he will take this opportunity to punish him severely. The Queen Mother felt a little tired and slowly lay back on the brocade couch with carved phoenix pattern. The emperor is the king of a country. The life and death of all the people in the world are controlled by the emperor. Even his own children, the life, death, and glory are within the emperor's thoughts. The AI family is old and can no longer control the emperor. The Queen Mother waved her hand. The emperor loves you, just deal with it how you want. The emperor held the teacup with a calm expression. Yinner has a female doctor named Adai next to her. The Queen Mother should know about it. The Queen Mother was startled and frowned slightly. What's wrong with her? The fragrant medicine used by Yi Ling to murder Qing Huan came from Adai's hand. The emperor's tone was calm and unruffled. I know that Adai is someone close to the queen, so this time I only treat it for the sake of the queen. I will not hold her accountable. When the Queen Mother heard this, her face suddenly darkened. What's the meaning? Is the emperor warning her? He demoted a noble concubine, punished Jinzi, and demoted Tianyin to the title of prince, but he just let a medical girl go? The emperor has good means. None of the important people were left behind, and all of them were punished to the extreme. But the unimportant people were not even held accountable, and they still said it was for her sake. The Queen Mother sneered again and again. Should the AI family be grateful to the emperor for his grace? Mother, there is no need to be angry. The emperor's voice was deep. You are my queen, and it is my duty to honor you. Even if the treasury is empty these years, the monthly expenses on my mother's side have never been reduced. This will still be the case in the future. Mother, tell the imperial kitchen what you want to eat directly, or ask the small kitchen to make more food that the queen likes to eat. No one dares to dishonor the queen's clothes and appearance. The best hairpin jewelry in the palace are all used by the queen first. I will never do that. I owe my mother half a cent. The Queen Mother's face gradually turned ugly. What does the emperor mean by telling the Iga these things? The Queen Mother is old and should enjoy her glory in peace, the emperor said calmly. The Queen Mother should not get involved in the matter of establishing a crown prince in the previous dynasty, the factional disputes among the princes, and the fights between the concubines in the harem. She will have to worry about it in the end. You may not be able to achieve what you want, it's boring. The Queen Mother froze. The emperor put down the teacup, stood up and brushed the sleeves and hem of the dragon robe. The Queen Mother is not well, so the queen and concubine Duan have been taking turns to take care of her for the past 2 days. Several female doctors in the palace have also served snacks. Please check your pulse in the morning and evening, don't make any mistakes. Then he ordered Chen Hai, you should pay more attention to these things on weekdays. If there are any troublesome things in the future, remember to remind them not to spread them to the Queen Mother's palace. Yes, Chen Hai lowered his head. I obey the order. The emperor bowed to the Queen Mother. My son is still involved in government affairs, so he won't sit with the Queen Mother any longer. The Queen Mother has a good rest. After saying that, he turned around and left. The Queen Mother clenched the handkerchief tightly. Her expression was dull, and her eyes were staring blankly at the emperor's leaving figure, as if she were looking at someone she didn't know at all. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 94. It seems to indicate that the recent troubled times, including the weather, are not very good. For 3 consecutive days, it was gloomy and the air was extremely hot. Chu Qinghuang did not leave the house, so he stayed in the house to read, drink tea, and compete with Fukang in martial arts in the morning and evening. When she first proposed the competition, Fukang's face turned pale, probably because he remembered the nightmares he had after every martial arts competition in the past. Chu Qinghuang was slightly inferior to Fukang in martial arts, but Fukang was aloof and did not understand submission. His temperament shows his true ability in every competition. So much so that when the original owner was in a bad mood after losing, he would torture him violently due to the suppression of his status. It would be fine if it happened once or twice. However, the cruel methods that lasted for more than a year have left a deep shadow in the mind of this shadow guard. Therefore, Chu Qinghuang naturally understood such a subconscious reaction, but nightmares sometimes wake up, and if you want to wipe away the shadow, you have to take the right medicine. So for 3 days in a row, Chu Qinghuang and Fukang stayed in the Dongshang pavilion without leaving the room. They competed 3 times in the morning. After the competition, they sat down to rest for a while, drink tea, and look at the scenery outside the window. On the first day of the competition, Fukang won the victory without any surprise. This was the result that Chu Qinghuang expected. For a top shadow user who has been training since childhood, his talent and training intensity are almost unparalleled. Even though Chu Qinghuang was a martial arts fanatic since childhood, his talent was rare, but their different identities meant that their methods of practicing martial arts were different. No one dared to use the Dark Pavilion's training methods on a noble princess. After 3 competitions, Fukang knelt on the ground stiffly, as if waiting for the whip to fall mercilessly. However, Chu Qinghuang smiled faintly, "If you lost just now, I still have reason to punish you for slacking off in martial arts, but it turned out that you won. Why are you still pretending to be sorry?" Fukang was slightly startled and raised his eyes to look at Chu Qinghuang. Then he realized that this was against the rules and quickly lowered his eyes. "Get up!" Chu Qinghuang turned around and walked into the dormitory. He raised his hand and untied the black clothes he wore specially for the competition. "Bring me my clothes." Fukang stood up and left silently. He brought Chu Qinghuang's clothes and helped her put them on. The dark red waist robe made His Highness's figure slender but not weak, exuding a dignified and noble demeanor from head to toe. Fukang was slightly absent-minded, then he lowered his eyes and took a step back, standing silently. His Highness is no longer the same as before. This thought flashed through my mind, and something seemed to be quietly softening in the corner of my heart that had always been indifferent. "Your Highness, are you tired from the competition?" Jinlan walked in with freshly brewed tea. There were 2 plates of freshly baked snacks on the tray. "My maid has just made tea. Your Highness will have some tea and rest for a while. Try it." Pastries freshly made from the kitchen. Chu Qinghuang raised her eyes and glanced at Fukang. "Come and sit with me for a while." Fukang recovered from his daze, respectfully agreed, walked to sit across from Chu Qinghuang. "Your Highness." Jinlan took out an invitation from her sleeve and presented it with both hands. "This is a post just sent from the Ling family. Please take a look at it." "Let it go." "Yes." Jinlan put down the invitation and picked up the tray. "My servant, please excuse me." Chu Qinghuang drank tea and said calmly, "After King Zhenbei receives the news that his daughter has been killed, it won't be long before he comes to Beijing in person." Fukang was silent for a moment and nodded gently, "Yes. This is an opportunity for me," Chu Qinghuang said calmly, "an opportunity to gain military power from the Ling family." Fukang said, "Master wants me to kill him." "Kill who?" "King Zhenbei." Fukang said and explained, "If King Zhenbei is killed, the soldiers in his fiefdom will be dissatisfied. 100,000 soldiers and horses will be a threat to the court. Once there is a threat from soldiers and horses, the emperor will inevitably need to appoint a general. The power of the Ling family is getting stronger and stronger. At this time, it will be natural for the eldest princess, who has the emperor's trust, to take charge of the army. but how to make the Ling family willingly hand over military power still requires careful thinking. The price is too high, Chu Qinghuang said casually. I just want to have fun and have no intention of causing Ziki to fall into civil strife. Yes. Fukang Chu Qinghuang raised her eyes to look at him, as if explaining, but also reminding, although I act in a domineering manner, there is a bottom line. You cannot ignore the life and death of innocent people at any time. The essence of the game is to enjoy this. It would be good if the final result can be achieved through the process. If it is not achieved, it will have no impact on me, but I don't want to see the loss of life. Her mother was once a gentle queen, and her father worked diligently for the people. For the prosperity and stability of the world, he did things that many emperors could not do in their lifetimes. Such stability should not be broken by her. Fukang was silent for a while. Yes. I will keep this in mind. The master was telling him not to kill innocent people indiscriminately, and he took note of it. Feng Gaifei and her party have been pushed into the quagmire. The Ling family sent someone to send the post at this time, and they must have some agenda. Chu Qinghuang picked up the invitation on the table. If I want his military power, I have to follow him. Only by having contact and knowing yourself and the enemy can you be victorious in every battle. Fukang became more submissive. Yes. Your Highness is very powerful. Everything he said was enigmatic, strategic, and very domineering. More domineering than the emperor. Chu Qinghuang looked up at him with a subtle expression. Fukang's eyebrows were slightly lowered and he was silent. The sky was overcast, with no sunshine in sight, and people's mood seemed a little unhappy. The whole morning passed leisurely. At noon, Chu Qinghuang summoned several servants to have lunch together, and 7 people sat at a table. Fukang's eyes were a little cold, especially when he saw Hong Yu, as if he was waiting to throw him out at any time. The Ling family handed over an invitation, inviting me to come to the house to appreciate the flowers in 3 days. Chu Qinghuang's eyes swept across the faces of several people in front of him, and his tone was light. You go with me. Ah! Several young masters were stunned. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 95. Hong Yu spoke subconsciously. Your Highness, do you really intend to soak up all the rain and dew? Hong Yu, shut up. Qi Ling frowned and glared at him, then turned to look at Chu Qinghuang. What are your orders, Your Highness? Just go with me. Let the people of the Ling family have a good look at the style of the servants in my backyard, Chu Qinghuang said calmly. As for the others, you can use them as you see fit when the time comes. You don't have to if you are concerned about me. You certainly don't have to worry about concubine Duan in the palace. The young masters understood that it seemed that the Ling family was planning to follow Feng Jinzi's path and wanted the eldest princess to become a real family, and an obedient family at that. Pity. Not to mention anything else, although the appearance of the eldest son and the second son of the Ling family are passable, they are far behind compared to the 5 young masters in the backyard of the eldest princess's residence. The eldest princess has always liked to judge people by their appearance, and she wants to keep pretty boys in the backyard, but for those with ordinary looks, she often doesn't even want to take a look. When the 5 young masters show up, the young master of the Ling family will definitely be overshadowed. Want to marry the eldest princess? I'm just afraid that when the time comes to serve as the eldest princess's servant, it will also depend on whether His Highness likes them. Everyone was silent for a moment. Hong Yu silently raised his eyes and looked at Chu Qinghuang. Let's go out to calm down His Highness. Can His Highness treat us equally in the future and give us more favor? Chu Qinghuang's eyes were indifferent. Ahem. Chu Ling Chuan raised his hand, covered his mouth and coughed lightly. I feel that as a servant, it is extremely treasonous to make such a request at this time. If you are pushing the envelope, you should be dragged out to make a decision according to the rules. Hong Yu was silent for a moment, then slowly turned to look at this gentle and harmless young man. Young Master Chu is right. Qi Ling nodded in agreement. Hong Yu has been a little restless recently and always wants to test His Highness's patience. It's time for him to relax his muscles and bones. Wen Zhan nodded, that's right. Zhong Jin nodded, both Mr. Chu and Mr. Qi are right. Hong Yu. When had he been isolated and didn't know it? These traitors. In the evening, Fukang and Chu Qinghuan competed 3 more times. I don't know whether it was a mistake in performance or a deliberate letdown, but Fukang actually lost 2 games in a row. When Chu Qinghuan looked at him expressionlessly, he pursed his lips and said, "This subordinate is incompetent." Inability. Chu Qinghuan was non-committal and said in a calm tone, "Can you play chess?" Playing chess? Fukang was silent for a moment and slowly shook his head. He only knows a little bit about playing chess, but there is still a long way to go before he is good at it. What a pity. Chu Qinghuang's tone was calm. I originally planned to teach you how to play chess if you win 3 more games tonight. The weather has not been good these 2 days, so I have nothing to do. But since you lose, well, forget it. Fukang's eyebrows drooped slightly. Playing chess is a time-killing thing. Although he has never had the opportunity to play chess with others, he has seen others playing chess. It requires absolute silence, concentration, and careful thinking, without being disturbed by others. Best of all, there were only 2 people. Thinking like this, a picture seemed to be sketched in my mind. Sunlight penetrated through the window. 2 people sat opposite each other in front of the window. One held black and the other held white. The black and white chess pieces were crisscrossed on the chessboard. The room was quiet. Peaceful. When the chess pieces are placed on the board, you only need to raise your eyes slightly to have a panoramic view of the beautiful face of the woman opposite. Fukang felt a little regretful. He just wanted to make his master happy, so he let it go a little bit. The master's martial arts were strong, and the gap between him and him was not big. He just needed to not go all out, and his master could easily defeat him. But Chu Qinghuang turned around and walked out. "Accompany me for a walk in the garden." Fukang came back to his senses and couldn't help but his voice became quieter. "Yes." The 2 of them stepped out of the courtyard one after another. It was gloomy outside, and the dark clouds in the sky blocked the light. It looked like it was going to rain at any time, which was a bit boring and dry. They originally thought that there would be no one in the garden in the evening like this, but unexpectedly someone arrived at the garden earlier than them. "Mr. Chu didn't stay in the backyard last night, did he go out to live?" Qi Ling, dressed in white, sat leisurely on the swing, his eyes quietly falling on the young man in front of him. "What does the Qingdongnan ticket number have to do with you?" "Nanji ticket number?" Chu Qinghuang paused slightly and looked at Chu Ling Chuan. "Master Qi, do you know where I went last night?" Chu Ling Chuan stood on the garden corridor, looking at the man in white clothes playing on the swing, with a faint smile on his lips. "It seems that you are interested in me. The whereabouts are well known. Young Master Chu has just arrived. As the eldest princess's servant, I should be careful." Qi Ling smiled lightly. "According to the rules, the servant does not have the right to enter and leave the princess's house freely. As your highness's 5th servant, June, we couldn't see you when we went to bed at night, so we naturally had to find a way to check." Chu Ling Chuan seemed curious. "What did you find out?" Qi Ling was about to speak when his eyes caught Chu Qinghuang's cold and beautiful face. He quickly stabilized the swing and stood up to salute. "Your Highness." Chu Ling Chuan turned his head and looked at the woman walking towards the end of the corridor, bowed and said, "Your Highness. It seems like you guys get along pretty well." Chu Qinghuang said calmly, "I'm very relieved." Chu Ling Chuan smiled slightly. "All the young masters in the backyard have good tempers, and it is relatively easy to get along with them." Although Qi Ling and Shen Kongjin kept trying to find out his identity intentionally or unintentionally in the past 2 days, overall, the atmosphere was really good. Everyone got along very happily and harmoniously. He had never seen such harmonious concubines in the inner house. Chu Qing Huang hummed and said calmly, "Let's have dinner together tonight. Go and inform the others, don't be late." Fu Kang, who was following Chu Qing Huang, lowered his eyes and kept silent. He couldn't help but tighten his lips, and regretted it again. The original two-person game turned into a dinner for 7 people, all of which was done by him. Chu Qing Huang turned her head, glanced at him calmly, raised her lips imperceptibly, and turned and walked out. Fu Kang lowered his head and didn't see her expression, but only he knew the regret in his heart. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 96. In the next 2 days, there will be 2 competitions every day, 3 games each time. Chu Qing Huang never won again. After Fukang won 3 games in the morning, he apologized as usual. After making sure that Chu Qing Huang was not angry, he silently turned around and entered Xinyuan Pavilion, and brought a set of chess equipment. The black and white chess pieces that felt warm in the tentacles were from Nuanyu. It was taken from the Hong family's warehouse during the last house raid. Chu Qing Huang had worked hard and had no interest in those gold and silver mundane things. She was not short of silver anyway, so she kept this chess set. Although the original owner was powerful in martial arts, he was not good at chess and had little interest in romance. Therefore, there were almost no chess sets, pianos, and flutes in the eldest princess's house to pass the time. After Chu Qing Huang ransacked his house, he left behind a set of chess sets and an ebony piano. At this time, this set of chess equipment really came in handy. Seeing Fukang placing the chessboard on the low couch in front of the window, Chu Qing Huang was silent for a moment, walked over and sat down, and said calmly, "Do you really want to learn?" Fukang nodded, "Yes. As a master, I will be stricter," Chu Qing Huang said calmly. "If you don't learn well, you may be beaten." Fukang pursed her thin lips lightly and said nothing. "But don't worry, I won't use the whip on you." Chu Qing Huang knew that the whip was his shadow. Moreover, the long whip was a weapon to her. It was used to deal with others, and she would not punish her own people. Slightly, then you go outside and find a cane to use as your home rule. Rattan. Fukang was silent for a moment. "The cane is not very strong, so it won't hurt if it hits someone." Chu Qing Huang raised his eyebrows. "You have the final say whether it hurts or not. My subordinates dare not." Chu Qing Huang motioned for him to sit down and place the black chess box in front of him. "You go first with black." Fukang lowered his eyebrows, took out a black stone from the chess box, and dropped it onto the chessboard. Chu Qing Huang then followed up with a white piece and had a brief conversation with Fukang while placing the piece. Fukang was indeed not very good at playing chess, but this was not surprising. The shadow guards of the Dark Pavilion have learned killing techniques since they were young, and most of their martial arts are so powerful that they are difficult to guard against. Whether it is protecting the master or performing assassination tasks, they rarely fail. In other aspects, they can only learn the ability to test poisons and identify poisons. As for playing music, chess, calligraphy, and painting, those are talents that only the nobles have the leisure to display. Chu Qing Huang was not surprised that Fukang was not good at it. She would teach as much as she had time. It would be beneficial and harmless anyway. The evening time passed little by little in the completely unequal game between the two. When it got dark, it finally started to rain continuously outside, which took away a little bit of the heat and made the air feel a little cooler. Aunt Wu came to report, "Your Highness, concubine Duan, please come into the palace." Chu Qing Huang's eyes fell on the chessboard, and his voice was calm. "It's so late, why are you going to the palace?" Mother Zhao from Ganquan Palace said that concubine Duan has not had dinner with His Highness for a long time, and she wants His Highness to come into the palace so that mother and daughter can talk. Chu Qinghuang raised his eyebrows, talking between mother and daughter? The last time they met, he had a tough tone and wanted her to marry Ling Jing, but now he was taking the tender approach of mother and daughter? With slightly deep eyebrows, Chu Qinghuang nodded casually, "Let Aunt Zhao wait first, I will go after finishing this dish." Aunt Wu hesitated for a moment, "Your Highness, is this okay?" Although a nanny is insignificant, Aunt Zhao represents concubine Duan. The mother invites her, but the daughter puts on airs, which seems a bit unjustifiable. "It doesn't matter," Chu Qinghuang said calmly, "you don't have to be afraid of her. If she dares to lose her temper, you can slap her." Ah! Aunt Wu's expression tightened. Her Royal Highness the Princess could whip someone at any time, but she didn't dare. She was just a nanny. As the saying goes, beating a dog depends on the master. So the master behind Aunt Zhao is the one who has received the favor of the Holy Spirit. The concubine. Chu Qinghuang's eyes turned slightly. "Hongyu is in the backyard." "Here I am." Chu Qinghuang ordered, "Let him entertain Nanny Zhao." Ah, this. Aunt Wu's expression was even weirder. Concubine Duan intended for the princess to marry a nephew of the Ling family, but Her Royal Highness the Princess asked her attendant to entertain Aunt Zhao. "Are you sure that your Highness did not deliberately cause trouble for concubine Duan?" Nanny Wu murmured in her heart, but she did not dare to question her master's words again and again. She respectfully agreed and turned around to go to the backyard. Fuqiang Chu Qinghuang took a piece and put it on the chessboard, and said in a calm voice, "Do you know why I asked Hongyu to entertain Aunt Zhao?" Fuqiang thought for a moment, "I don't know. When playing chess, you must be attentive, focused, and calm." Chu Qinghuang dropped a white piece onto the chessboard with a calm tone. "If you have an impetuous mind and are overjoyed or angry, the result will only be a disastrous defeat." Fuqiang didn't know whether he understood what she wanted to express, so he nodded obediently, "Yes." The same goes for other things. If it can be solved with force, you can use force to solve it. If it is not convenient to use force to solve it for the time being, you have to use your brain to think about it. Chu Qinghuang raised her eyes and looked at him. Concubine Duan 20. She has been favored for many years. Although she is not the queen of the palace, the power behind her is no less than that of the queen. We cannot use force to deal with the Ling family for the time being. Fuqiang nodded, "Yes. However, even if we don't use force, I don't have the temperament to swallow my anger. If concubine Duan makes me unhappy, I don't mind causing trouble for her." Chu Qinghuang's eyebrows were slightly cold. "She can tolerate it once or twice, but she can tolerate it 3 times or 4 times. You can force yourself to endure it, and after a while, she will no longer be able to control her emotions." As if something clicked in his mind, Fuqiang suddenly realized, "I understand." Chu Qinghuang raised his eyebrows, "What do you understand?" "Concubine Duan is being favored, and it is not convenient for the master to confront her head-on for the time being," Fuqiang said, "so let her lose control of her emotions and lose her composure first. Going against one's own mother, even if you win in the end, will be talked about and even lead to some bad consequences. No one will care who is right and who is wrong between mother and daughter, and no one cares how concubine Duan treats her daughter. As long as the mother and daughter are hostile, the world will definitely criticize the unfilial daughter. Besides, the Ling family holds military power, and only a fool would break up with them until they have the military power in their own hands. But even if you don't break up with them for the time being, it doesn't mean you have to tolerate their unreasonable troubles. It's okay to cause trouble for them. After all, Chu Qinghuang's temper is recognized as ignorant, and some minor rudeness can be punished. Tolerate. Once a person loses control of his emotions, he is prone to do irrational things, especially concubines in the palace. The queen and concubines are always by the emperor's side, and they are in the center of power. They make too many mistakes, and even the most favored concubines will gradually lose the emperor's favor. A daughter could not confront her mother directly, but the emperor wanted to deal with his concubine, but no one dared to express dissatisfaction. This is what people often call strategy. Fuqiang came to the conclusion in his heart that His Highness was a smart and strategic woman, skilled in both civil and military affairs, and had a strong heart. She was much more powerful than many men in the world. Chu Qinghuang raised his eyes slightly, looking at Fuqiang with an increasingly subtle expression. The little shadow guard seemed to admire her. After a moment of silence, she didn't mind letting him admire him even more, although doing it yourself is very fulfilling. Killing with a borrowed knife is also a common tactic that people use. Whether it is in the harem or on the battlefield, this tactic is always feasible. Fuqiang nodded. The master was indeed well versed in the art of intrigue. Chu Qinghuang couldn't help but twitch the corner of her mouth. She found that mind reading was a very interesting power. The rich psychological thoughts of the little shadow guard could make her feel good. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 97. Unlike the relaxed and leisurely atmosphere of the East Shang Pavilion, the atmosphere in the front hall was obviously a bit depressing. Nanny Zhao was getting anxious. She waited for the princess but she didn't come. She couldn't help but get angry at the maid. Did Nanny Wu go to pass the message? The emperor and concubine Duan are waiting for the prince to have a meal in Ganquan Palace. You bitches have their heads chopped off for delaying the time. The maids stood aside, lowered their heads and dared not speak. Go and pass the message with 2 more people. Nanny Zhao frowned and ordered coldly, please hurry up, Your Highness the Princess, don't let the emperor and concubine Duan wait too long. Concubine Duan dared to be so slow in passing the message. What kind of words are these? Nanny Zhao thought about Chu Qinghuang's temperament. She didn't know who she resembled. She didn't look like a mother and daughter at all compared to the gentle and elegant concubine Duan. She was simply a living demon. If she hadn't been useful to concubine Duan. It's so late, and it's still raining outside. Concubine Duan invites the princess to the palace for dinner, holding an umbrella and wearing a red dress. The young man walked leisurely in the rain, his voice as lazy as a cat. Is the princess's mansion so poor that it can't even afford to eat? Madame Zhao's face changed, and she was about to scold who was so rude, but when she looked up, she was almost dazzled by the light for a moment. You, who are you? The young man in front of her was very beautiful. He was extremely beautiful and stunning. The red dress made him radiant and charming, especially when he just walked to the door with an umbrella. The shocking feeling almost made her, a nanny who was used to seeing the beauties in the harem, lose her mind. However, she quickly came to her senses. What the young man said was so bold. Madame Zhao looked at him coldly, trying to find her voice again. Empress Duan came to give orders, and you allowed me to make up stories so brazenly. Make up stories? How dare I make up stories about Empress Duan? Hong Yu smiled nonchalantly, handed the umbrella to the maid next to her, and stepped over the threshold. I just found it strange. Usually when the weather is fine, concubine Duan doesn't come to give orders, but now it's dark and slippery, and it's drizzling, but concubine Duan thought that Her Royal Highness the Princess hadn't had dinner yet. Could it be that concubine Duan thought that the drizzling rain was suitable for romance? AI, which young man has been arranged for His Highness to meet in the palace? Madame Zhao said angrily, you are so presumptuous. Why are you so fierce? Be careful not to scare me. Hong Yu frowned, carefully raised her hand and patted her chest, looking at her with a frightened face. I tell you, His Highness now loves me the most. Apart from me, she will not look at anyone else. I will never let any messy man enter the mansion. There are already enough cats and dogs in the mansion. Are you the male favorite of Her Highness the Princess? Madame Zhao was shocked. Why are you saying it so harshly? Hong Yu was dissatisfied. I am the princess's servant. Servant? Isn't it just a male favorite? Zhao Mama's face was gloomy. You are a lowly person who uses your beauty to please others, and you dare to make up stories about concubine Duan? Are you tired of living? How dare you? Hong Yu frowned and shouted, you are a lowly servant, and you dare to show off in front of me. Do you want to come in straight and leave lying down? You. Zhao Mama stretched out her hand and pointed at him tremblingly. She was so angry that her face was distorted and her words were incoherent. You are so bold. You don't know how to live or die? I will definitely report you to Concubine Duan, and tomorrow Concubine Duan will beat you to death, and beat you to death. Let's see who will leave lying down. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 98. Hong Yu raised her eyebrows. Mom is old, don't be so irritable. If the eldest princess sees you later, she will think that I bullied you. Aunt Zhao was so angry with him that she could not speak. Her cheeks kept twitching. She just wished that someone would immediately pull him out and kill him with a stick. If possible, even if he was hit with a stick 100 times, he would not be able to forgive her hatred. Mommy, do you want some tea? Hong Yu sat down on the chair on the left and raised her hand to pour herself a cup of tea. It's still raining outside. Mom, please be patient and wait until His Highness is done with his work before I follow you into the palace. Finished. Aunt Zhao was stunned for a moment, and the anger on her face subsided slightly, but her voice was still cold. What is Her Royal Highness busy with? Of course you are busy with the things that the Emperor has told you. This is a secret and you cannot tell anyone casually. Hong Yu thought for a while. Actually, I don't know what your highness is busy with. Anyway, he is very busy, so busy that he can't even touch the ground. It is difficult for me, the most favored servant, to see His Highness. After finishing speaking, he sighed melancholy. Your Highness, it's really hard. Aunt Zhao moved her mouth, but finally said nothing. She frowned tightly, sat down on the chair in silence, and continued to wait. Otherwise, what else can be done? Mommy, can you tell me why Concubine Duan allowed His Highness to enter the palace at this time? Hong Yu opened her eyes, with a curious expression on her face. I guess she won't really arrange an encounter for His Highness. Aunt Zhao's suppressed anger was aroused by these words again, and she said coldly, is it something that you can intervene in the matter of Concubine Duan? The shameless little bitch talks about Israel's service so openly and honestly. Anyone who can win the favor of the eldest princess is the same as her. Hong Yu's eyes swept across his face. Her eyes were subtle, and she secretly thought that this nanny seemed to look down on the princess. As the nun next to Concubine Duan, her attitude usually represents the attitude of the master behind her. If Concubine Duan's usual attitude towards the eldest princess had not affected her, she would have been on the territory of the eldest princess's mansion at this time. Even if she had the courage, she wouldn't dare to be so domineering. Moreover, judging from Her Royal Highness the eldest princess's daily behavior, how many people in this huge imperial city are not afraid of her in their hearts? Even those people who are hopelessly stupid can't help but want to show off in front of His Highness on the surface, but once His Highness takes it seriously, aren't they all so frightened that their faces turn pale and they kneel down and beg for mercy? Do you really think that because Concubine Duan is the mother-in-law of His Highness the eldest princess, she can ignore His Highness? A nanny dares to take advantage of others, which shows that Concubine Duan is not a qualified mother at all. Hong Yu thought like this, and then raised the corners of her lips in a charming arc. Mommy. Aunt Zhao snorted, stared at his charming expression, and said angrily, what do you want to say again? Why are you so excited, Mama? Be careful of scaring others. Hong Yu put down the teacup, resting her chin on her hand, her eyes gleaming, showing a picture of a charming beauty. I just want to ask, Concubine Duan. Is the Empress higher in rank, or is Her Royal Highness the eldest princess in a more noble position? Aunt Zhao's face darkened. What do you mean? Just a casual question, Hong Yu pouted. Originally speaking, the eldest princess should have a higher status and more noble status than concubine Duan. However, concubine Duan is the elder and the mother of His Highness, so the eldest princess should be higher than concubine Duan. Is the queen a little shorter? Aunt Zhao frowned. That's indeed the case. But what I just said is just based on common sense, Hong Yu sighed, and then said, the key is that my parents, Your Highness, seem different from other princesses. Aunt Zhao's expression changed again. What did this little bitch want to say? Other princesses can neither hold military power nor help the emperor do things. They are also weak, and cannot carry hands or shoulders. They are not as favored as my highness, and the emperor has never made an exception for her to be named the eldest princess. Treatment. Hong Yu narrowed his eyes with an expression of admiration. My highness is indeed the best. Aunt Zhao's face was ashen. She took a deep breath, turned around and said, who will go to the eldest princess to urge her again? Let's see when the eldest princess can finish her work. Don't keep the emperor and concubine Duan waiting for too long. If she continues to stay here, she will definitely be so angry at this little bitch that she will vomit blood. Are you scolding me in your heart, Mama? Hong Yu raised her eyebrows. I originally had a humble status. If Mama wants to scold me, she can scold me directly. I promise not to scold me back. If you scold me in your heart, you will hold yourself back. Bad, but let me guess, what did Grandma scold me for? Aunt Zhao's breathing was rapid. Actually, for our status, it doesn't matter what others think of me, and it doesn't matter if I get scolded. As long as His Highness is willing to pamper me, let me have food and clothing, and let me wear beautiful clothes, and even scold me a few times. Why not? Hong Yu said in a calm tone, compared to Grandma working as a cow and a horse in the palace, at least I live a happier life than a god. Your Highness the princess neither beats me nor scolds me. She pampers me every day. You are just acting like a cow and a horse. Aunt Zhao couldn't bear it anymore and interrupted him angrily. Concubine Duan is very good to me. I have never felt like a cow or a horse. Whether you have it or not, you are still a slave. You have to be grateful when concubine Duan rewards you with endless dishes. But I am different. Your Highness has doted on me to the extent that I can eat with her. It's just two people sitting at the same table eating, chatting while eating, and His Highness feels good when he looks at me. The eldest princess is here. Hong Yu's voice stopped, and she silently turned her head to look outside the hall. Fu Kang held an umbrella, and the princess, who looked noble and imposing, walked in slowly. Her cold eyes swept across Hong Yu and looked at Zhao Ma. Greetings, greetings to Her Royal Highness the Princess. Zhao Ma knelt down in a panic and saluted. This old servant greets Her Royal Highness. May Your Highness live 1,000 years. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 99. Chu Qinghuang's expression was indifferent. I heard you arguing from all the way. Do you still have any rules? Your Highness. Hong Yu's beautiful face was full of grievance, and she pounced towards Chu Qinghuang like a butterfly. Before he could finish speaking, he was picked up by one hand and thrown out. Hong Yu jumped in anger. Your Highness, Fu Kang is too presumptuous. Fu Kang stood silently beside Chu Qinghuang, ignoring his cries. If it weren't for the fact that he had just accomplished the task of dealing with Aunt Zhao, it wouldn't have been as simple as throwing him out. Aunt Zhao stood up, controlled her emotions, and bowed her head respectfully. Your Highness, Princess Duan, concubine Duan has prepared a sumptuous meal in Ganquan Palace, and asked your highness to come into the palace and have a meal together. Concubine Duan probably thinks that his highness is too poor to eat and is hungry every day. Hong Yu walked in and murmured in a low voice, since we know that your highness is poor, why don't you ask someone to send you some money? This meal can be eaten there's still tomorrow, and we can't go to the palace to eat and drink every day. Aunt Zhao's face turned black and blue. She didn't dare to get angry in front of Chu Qinghuang. She just scolded Hong Yu bloody in her heart. The little bitch is really stupid. When concubine Duan said she wanted the princess to have a meal, did she really mean she was going to have a meal? Don't know what the origin is. When the empress in the palace invites people, she usually either has a meal or drinks tea and enjoys flowers. Is it possible to just say, I have something secret to discuss with you? Idiot. The harder Nanny Zhao scolded her in her heart, the more respectful and cautious her tone became on the surface. The palace carriage is already waiting outside. Is there anything else you need to give your highness? There is nothing to tell you, Chu Qinghuang said calmly. Let's go. Aunt Zhao breathed a sigh of relief, and Haiking's face looked better now. Yes. It's raining harder outside. On the way to the eldest princess's gate, Fu Kang held the umbrella steadily to ensure that not a drop of rain would fall on the master. Aunt Zhao did not receive such treatment. She was a nun in the palace, so to speak. At first he is a popular person in front of concubine Duan, but at worst he sounds like a slave. How can he dare to hold an umbrella in front of the eldest princess? After walking out of the gate and getting on the carriage, Fu Kang stood beside the carriage with his umbrella closed. Fu Kang, Chu Qinghuang said calmly, get in the car. Aunt Zhao's expression changed and she unconsciously looked at Fu Kang, who was dressed in black. Is this person the bodyguard of Her Royal Highness the Princess? What do you mean, Your Highness? Let a guard ride with her? What shocked her even more was that after hearing the eldest princess's instructions, the guard named Fu Kang stepped onto the carriage without any hesitation, opened the curtain and walked in. Aunt Zhao's face suddenly turned green and white. There are already 5 servants in the palace of the eldest princess, and now they are somehow getting involved with the guards. It is simply. After much hesitation, Aunt Zhao still held back her temper and said, Your Highness, there are differences between men and women. Besides, the guards are of low status. How can they ride in the same car with Your Highness? Chu Qinghuang sat in the carriage and said lightly, I know. Now that you know it, why are you so unscrupulous? Aunt Zhao frowned and stared at the closed carriage for a long time. After confirming that Chu Qinghuang had no intention of letting the guards get out of the car, she raised her hand coldly. The carriage moved slowly. After she returns to the palace, she must have a good talk with concubine Duan. The eldest princess's dissolute behavior is simply a disgrace to the concubine. The drizzle of rain fell on her body. Although it was not heavy, the feeling of being wet all over her body was not pleasant, especially since Aunt Zhao was almost pampered in the palace. Because she had the trust of concubine Duan, she was not required to do the rough work in Ganquan Palace. Take action, she gave instructions about the empress's affairs, and naturally there were people below vying to do it. As a nun, she lives a more comfortable life than the average official wife. However, tonight the eldest princess was so angry that she had to go into the palace with the eldest princess in the rain. The eldest princess would rather let a guard get into the car and go with her instead of taking care of her as a nanny. Concubine Duan had never treated her like this. Aunt Zhao was unhappy, and as she walked, she thought bitterly in her heart that she must complain in front of the empress after returning to the palace. His Highness did not take concubine Duan seriously at all. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 100. Due to a little delay in going back and forth, it was almost midnight when Chu Qing Huang arrived at Ganquan Palace. For the ladies in the palace who were accustomed to going to bed early and getting up early, it was really late enough to have dinner at this time. Concubine Duan smiled so hard in Renchao Palace that her face almost froze. If it weren't for the emperor's presence, her temper would have exploded long before a cup of tea. For more than 20 years, she has always shown a gentle image to others, especially in front of the emperor. She is really gentle, considerate, and considerate. When she was young, she was the most beautiful interpretive flower in the harem. Every time the emperor came to her, he could get the most considerate and comfortable care. More than 20 years have passed, and the beautiful years of youth are gone forever. Fortunately, the Ling family is still favored now. It only takes a few more years for Tianzheng to sit on the throne of the prince, and for the emperor to return to the west on the crane. Concubine Duan was naturally promoted to the position of queen mother, and her wishes were fulfilled in this life. Except for one Chu Qing Huang who didn't like her, the others were really benevolent. With a beautiful picture of a few years later in her mind, Concubine Duan's mood improved, her temper finally calmed down a little, and she said in a gentle and slightly condemning tone, "I don't know what this kid Qing Huang is busy with. Aunt Zhao, I've been gone for so long, why haven't I come back yet?" The emperor drank tea and said comfortingly, "Don't worry, Qing Huang should be very busy these 2 days, I will just wait for her. Besides, Qing Huang was frightened in the suburbs before, so she deserves a good rest for 2 days." Frightened? Concubine Duan was slightly stunned. How could the emperor say this with his eyes open? There were more than 40 young men and women who went to the suburbs that day. After returning from the suburbs, most of them stayed behind closed doors for several days. It would be somewhat credible to say that they were frightened, but Chu Qing Huang? Even if everyone is scared to death, Chu Qing Huang will never be affected at all. Concubine Duan took the teacup and ordered the palace servants to remove all the food from the table. "These are all cold. Go and bring them hot ones." "Yes." The palace people were about to step forward when someone outside announced, Your Majesty, the eldest princess is here." After the words fell, the emperor and Concubine Duan looked up at the same time, and immediately saw Chu Qing Huang's otherworldly face. The national treasury is not very rich now. Even if the Hong family is robbed and the 700,000 to 800,000 taels of silver are obtained, it is still a drop in the bucket in terms of military pay. There is a big gap. Chu Qing Huang's eyes fell on the palace people, so the harem is, shouldn't we put an end to extravagance and waste? Concubine Duan's expression froze, and the hand holding the teacup tightened unconsciously. Father Chu Qing Huang bowed and saluted, "You invited me to come for dinner so late? If Aunt Zhao had gone a little later, I would have fallen asleep." Aunt Zhao's face changed suddenly as she walked in, and she gritted her teeth gloomily. Even though she had always been good at speaking with a mask on, after hearing Chu Qing Huang's words, she almost couldn't help but break her skills. Looking up and looking at Concubine Duan, Aunt Zhao bowed and stood aside. She had a lot of resentment in her heart that she wanted to complain about, but she could only endure it in front of the emperor. Going late? The eldest princess had the nerve to let her wait in the front hall for half an hour, but now she could so confidently say that she was late? The emperor asked her to sit down and said with concern, "Go to bed very early recently. After you finish what you need to do during the day and have nothing to do at night, you should naturally go to bed early." Chu Qing Huang walked to the table and sat down. "My son is a martial arts practitioner. Go to bed early at night and get up early in the morning to practice martial arts. We can't let our martial arts go to waste." The emperor nodded in agreement. This kind of routine is good. Compared to those princes and powerful ministers who were still busy strategizing in the middle of the night, King Huang's life was obviously much simpler. Of course, The eldest princess also has several beautiful servants. If she really has nothing to do, it would probably be a bit of an understatement, but of course there is no need to tell him in detail about her children's personal relationship. In general, the simpler King Huang's life is, the more reassured the emperor is. The last thing he wants to see now is Qing Huang getting close to any prince, even if they are both from concubine Duan. The same goes for Tianzheng. He hoped that Qing Huang could stay away from all the princes and keep a safe distance from the ministers in the court. I'm calling you into the palace tonight. In addition to having dinner together, I have something else I want to tell you. The emperor took the initiative and said, I have already informed you about the assassination you encountered in the suburbs a few days ago. The people involved have dealt with it. You haven't been in the palace for the past 2 days, so you may not know much about it. Now I want to ask you, are you satisfied with the treatment of the imperial concubine and her daughter? Chu Qing Huang was slightly surprised. Concubine, mother, and daughter. Oh, she is no longer the imperial concubine. The emperor's voice became colder unconsciously when he mentioned the previous imperial concubine Feng Gaifei and the current Feng Zheyi. The imperial concubine was demoted to Zheyi. Yi Ling will go with his mother in the next 2 days. He went to the Qingyan palace, and since he came back that day, he has always had nightmares and babbled non-stop. He heard from the doctor that the situation was not good, and it was really his own fault. When it comes to the last sentence, it is inevitable that there is a hint of uncontrollable anger. Chu Qing Huang was silent for a moment. I have nothing to be dissatisfied with, as long as my father makes the decision. Qing Huang concubine Duan smiled softly. Your father said that you were wronged. Even the legitimate son of the Feng family did not escape the heavy responsibility. He was beaten 50 times. I'm afraid you are still unconscious at this moment. And those noble sons of the clan have all been punished. What I mean is, since the princes have taken the initiative to show weakness and apologize, then you have a lot of money, so don't bother with them. Chu Qing Huang said nothing. Several princes can lower themselves to apologize. Has Prime Minister Feng made any move now? The emperor asked angrily. Does he think he is more arrogant than the princess and the princes? I feel aggrieved to punish Feng Jinzi. Got him. Concubine Duan glanced at Chu Qing Huang, smiled lightly and persuaded, Prime Minister Feng is the Prime Minister of a country after all. Chu Qing Huang sighed lightly. In front of His Majesty the Emperor, concubine Duan's words add fuel to the fire. She has been reminding the Emperor that several princes have gone to apologize, but the Prime Minister has not shown any sign of it. Is this because he resents His Majesty's punishment, or is it? Don't you take the eldest princess seriously at all? Of course, it was also reminding Chu Qing Huang that the weather was getting hotter, but it was time for the Prime Minister's mansion to get colder. But will Chu Qing Huang do what she wants? The Prime Minister loves his son very much, so he probably hasn't thought of apologizing yet. Chu Qing Huang said calmly, not minding whether Feng Xiang went to apologize or not. Besides, Feng Jinzi is different from the others. Those nobles, the children, have not been injured before, and the 50 big boards cannot kill them, but Feng Jinzi has been injured more and more, and the situation may be more dangerous. It is only natural that the Prime Minister should stay in the house to take care of his son. Whether Feng Xiang apologizes or not will not affect the outcome of his death. The Feng family is just a grasshopper after autumn. Concubine Duan's smile faltered. Can't you understand what I mean? The injuries are all caused by him, the Emperor said coldly. Feng Xiongagruo still doesn't know how to educate his son. He will only cause greater trouble next time. Chu Qing Huang narrowed her eyes and picked up some food to eat. She had no interest in the Feng family for the time being. She has enough evidence in hand and can raid her home at any time, but right now the Queen and concubine Duan are waiting to see her actions, both wanting Chu Qing Huang to strike while the iron is hot and push the third prince out of the quagmire and into hell. It's a pity that Chu Qing Huang refused to let them get their wish. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Taboola.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, Taboola below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix.